Playing bass?
I've been playing bass for 10 years. 10 years.
When you started playing bass, did you start playing rock or jazz?
It was predominantly rock. It was like whatever was on the radio, basically. So I played a lot of like commercial metal and punk and Blink-182 music.
What made you start playing bass in general?
My father actually forbade me from playing guitar because he has some sort of personal vendetta against guitar players. So he was like, if you're a bass player, you'll always be able to play with a band because there's no good bass players out there. So I'm like, alright, whatever. I picked up a bass one time, and as soon as he saw that I was sort of interested, he just bought me one.
So what do you generally play now?
Now it's mostly a combination of jazz and funk. I call it junk.
Have you had any experience playing other genres, other styles?
I mean, yeah, I've played with pop bands, I've played with rock bands, I've played, with jazz bands and funk bands, separated forms of music. And then I've also played in other circumstances where it's like a jam situation where you can actually put all of those together in one thing.
Do you find that any one of those genres has influenced the way that you play in other genres?
All of them for sure. It's like cooking, I guess. Like,
so
if you're better at grilling, you're probably going to be better at sautéing. If you're better at sautéing, you're probably going to be better at broiling.
So what is the broiling of the musical world? Is that
broiling of the musical world? I think that would be.
Do you have any experience playing metal?
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Metal is extremely complicated. The way that you have to move a lot faster in general, so it's definitely a workout in your hands. If you're going to play something, that's a blues line per se, you're going to be doing mostly, a solid, steady. Metal, just the whole dynamic shifts. You're playing these really, really like jammed, intertwined things. Your entire technique shifts.
Do you think that there's a shift in modern society in the way that musicians really look at the approach of writing music?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, the big part of it is that it's so accessible that you can look at all these different forms and you can see not only what's useful about every form, but you can also see what's good in every form. There's going to be different degree. There are some music out there in every genre that I would say is just not all that great. Sometimes, for whatever reason. But the way that it works now is everybody has access to just about everything that is recorded and out there, so everybody can discriminate. Everybody can look at certain things and say, this is an example of like better classical. There are some classical tunes that are really, really slow and boring, and there's some that are really, really big and beautiful, and it depends on how they're written and how they're constructed and put together. With that said, it's like to put different genres of music into one another and to learn to use those qualities with each other and against each other. It just allows for a way more diverse atmosphere. I would say that the majority of music is a mashup at this point, in the sense that there's not really any genre of music that's gone completely untouched. Jazz has been touched by rock, classical has been touched by jazz.
As far as your career as a musician, as far as your personal playing, would you say that you really needed to branch out and learn other styles in order to become a well-rounded musician?
Absolutely. I think at this point, if you're looking at it in terms of a career, it's very seldom that you can find, aside from, getting famous in a rock band, it's seldom, you can't really find a situation where to be a working musician in any place, you can just know one style of music and only play that, because you're just going to run out of jobs that'll, pay your bread off with just one style of music. You have to be diverse. You have to be able to play with a pop band and make an extra few dollars, and more often than not, those bands tend to be pretty awful. But to be able to play jazz is really, really useful because not too many can do it. And even though it's in far less demand than rock or pop or dance or anything like that, you're still far more likely to get a job playing some jazz when there aren't other jazz, in my case, bass players, or, you play something like saxophone, you're even a hotter commodity.
So, in your experience, how much music have you been able to make that was actually in the interest of making art versus actually working?
Pretty, depends on how much you're playing. I've had times before where I've been, playing every day with a group and constantly writing and not making that much money. So it depends on how you want to live, but if you want to have a place to live and eat and be able to have a car to drive around in and go to school and do whatever you need to do, you really kind of have to work.
Say, for instance, you were in a group that was very commercial and you were making a living doing that. Do you find that to be a satisfying experience musically because you're able to play in general?
No. You want to be able to play something that you're actually creating and doing what you think is best with, and to do something surely for the sake of being popular. I mean, people have used the term sellout forever. Anytime a band, starts underground and does really well and writes a certain way and then gets signed and then changes that style of music, I mean, I feel like just the connotation to it is like, it's almost like plagiarism. It's like, that's not you that did that.
Now, what about a band that actually becomes popular and stays true to what they're doing, but that just happens to be what people want to hear? How do you feel about that?
I mean, if people want to hear it, then, if it's really, really popular and really, really good, that's awesome. That's there's a few, there's very few instances, but there are some instances where it's like, well, then good for them. Like, they've done their thing and they've been really good and they keep doing something new with it, and people love it because it's so honest and because it's just, that's the goal.
Can you give us any examples of artists that you feel have done that?
The best example that I could come up with would honestly be Radiohead. Someone that basically got really, really, nationally huge, playing something that was very, very odd, but still really, really catchy. People were really, really digging it. And then they basically said, we're not going to do that anymore. Wrote another album that was nothing like that. On the whole, a bunch of people didn't like it, but a lot of people stuck with the band, and I mean, now since that album they've released 3 more, something like that.
Now, Radiohead actually offers an interesting example because the members of Radiohead have branched out into other medias in order to express themselves artistically, like in the example of Johnny Greenwood working on There Will Be Blood, doing the soundtrack. How do you feel about that?
That's great. I mean, the thing about writing with a band is that you're going to have this degree of give and take. You're going to have compromise. You're going to have, don't play it that way, play it that way, or, I just want to play this part and everybody else shut up, or, you've got all these different contrasting dynamics. So sometimes, if you've got the idea and you can make it good, then you've got another idea that's not going to work with the band, then yeah, get outside of that. The one thing about Radiohead that I've always found very, very cool is that they still write together even when they do work on other projects. Tom York's got a solo project. I believe Colin Greenwood has one. I know Ed O'Brien has one. Like, these guys all do different things, but the band still gets together every few years and puts out another album that tops the charts as soon as it's released.
Generally speaking, would you say that one of the greatest that a musician needs in modern contemporary music making is diversity over talent? Or do you think that it's a combination of both things?
I guess you kind of got to be talented to be able to get all those things down correctly. At the same time, there are some people that, I'm sure that are way better jazz players than I am a jazz player or a funk player. You know, there's a better pop player than I'm a pop player, there's a better rock player than I'm a rock player, but I feel like the fact that I've been able to put all those together I've been able to access more that way.
So you've sort of become a niche player.
I wouldn't say a niche player exactly. I would say that you're kind of outside of the niche because of the diversity. But if you are fitting into one specific niche, then you're just limited. It doesn't mean that you're not as good of an artist. It just means that you're very limited. Which maybe that is something that you could say makes them not as good.
Now, I would argue that in order for somebody to become a niche artist, they would really have to be a virtuoso. They have to go so far beyond what everybody else has done because there's so much material out there to compare it to. So, in the example of Psyopus, you see the extreme metal guitar playing. It's really above and beyond what anybody else has been able to do. Would you say that that's really what's necessary in order to make it in that style?
I think that every time you push, even if it's genre music, anytime you push a genre farther, music as a whole is evolving. So, yeah, if you're a virtuoso on that level, you rule.
Where do you see your career going in the next couple of years as far as playing?
South. I mean, geographically.
I was thinking in terms of sales. No, I mean, do you see yourself relocating in the interest of being a more marketable musician?
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, maybe not more marketable. I suppose it's more marketable, but I mean, it's a lot harder to do things based on the area that you're in. If you're in Rochester and there's only 5 clubs that will really pay you well to play in them, and you're not going to be able to pack those 5 clubs 5 nights a week, you're going to need more clubs. So you can drive, which is entirely feasible. Just depends on how you want to approach it, the way that you think is best. So I would relocate.
So
I like to walk, I don't like to drive.
How much of the decision-making process in terms of your life revolves around the idea that you're trying to forward your career as a musician?
Pretty much all of it. Pretty much everything is just in the focus of getting things in order so that that might work.
To what degree do you expect to take a financial hit because of that decision?
To what degree? I'm 100% certain that I have been poor and will probably remain poor for a while because of music. I have a house. I'm not starving.